We have a couple of things to do in this session. Dan will do a presentation on some of the work that he does, talking about this marketplace. We're going to have a short video that is a transition to a student panel, real live students, real subject area experts. By the way, they will all be looking for jobs when they graduate, those of you who are looking for talented young folks. And we're going to try to get to a couple of questions from the audience as well. So with that, let me introduce, we're not going to take a lot of time with reading bios. I'm pleased to introduce the next presenter, who is Dan, Coates. Dan is president of Youth Pulse. He will tell you what he does. Dan, it's up to you.
Good morning, everyone. What we wanted to do is bring to you the voice of the American college student, why Pulse is an organization that does market research amongst college students. What I wanted to do is start a little bit with some fast facts on college students. I'm sure many of you as educators are more than aware of the increasing enrollment in college. North of 20 million college students in America. Actually, college students are more numerous than the residents of any state except for two, California and Texas. So when you think about college students, they're greater than the population of New York State, Florida, and everything underneath that.
Let's continue the survey questions that we started before we get it up on the screen. We know most of you have a campus affiliation. With all of you with a campus affiliation, raise your hands. How many of you are teaching this term? How many of you do tech support? Many of you indicated you have no problems with your students. How many of you have problems with your colleagues? Okay. All right. Vendor is such a harsh term, so we're going to try and do this a little differently. How many of you are part of the technology and content provider industries? Doesn't that sound better? Okay. And then there must be another group here. How many of you are here hoping to get a great swag bag? All right. And while we're waiting, we're up, so we fill the void as we go. All right, Dan, back to you.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, so 21.5 million U.S. college students, mostly undergrads. 76% attend public schools, 24% private, and it's a big industry. $333 billion in annual spend on the U.S. higher education marketplace, and these are all from the U.S. Department of Education, and projections of college students just growing by leaps and bounds. Looking from 2007 to 2014, you just see a steady increase in, as we heard from the previous speakers, demand for higher education. To understand college students, you have to understand their generation, their context. And so the living generations in America today, starting off with the GI generation is very similar to current college students, and whether you call them Generation Y or millennials, they're of the same generational archetype, the hero archetype. The GI generation was a generation of good kids. Education was on the rise, and big things were going on in society, and the GI generation banded together, solved problems in a team environment, saved the world, some might say. The silent generation followed. The silent generation as an archetype is very much some heavy stuff just went down, and we're going to keep our heads low, and we're going to keep our noses clean. We're going to take the places in society that we're told to take, and we're going to just make sure that we're good folks. The downside to the silent generation is about midlife. They all had these midlife crises and wondered why the heck they followed all the rules all their life and what it ever got for them. Followed by the baby boomers. I mean, my gosh, the baby boomers have redefined everything, whether it was education, whether it was society, whether it was parenting. And in fact, most millennials, the ones that are in college right now, have baby boomers as parents. So there's this little bit of a revolutionary spirit that baby boomers have that has indeed been passed on to their kids. I've got a great quote that I like to say all the time. Boomers burn bras, and their kids, millennials, burn playlists. Generation X kind of followed in the wake of the boomers. You know, certainly society was kind of starting to get a little tired of youth and their sort of egregious sort of lack of respect for authority. So Generation X kind of had the boom lowered on them. They weren't actually bad kids, but they were sort of in this environment of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. A lot of sort of negative things going on, things like youth pregnancy on the rise, things like performance academically was just starting to turn around towards the towards the tail end of Generation X. But certainly this was that generation of outcasts. And you see nowadays folks like Michael Dell, very individualistic. Nobody's going to help me do anything. What I'm going to get out of life, I'm going to claw and kick and scrape out of life. and not very much team-oriented, very much individual performers. Then come the millennials. Birth years between 1982 and 2004, the largest generation in the history of America, set to top with a little bit of immigration that'll occur, 100 million members in our society. So a massive generation that it all started, in my mind, with Barney the dinosaur, telling them all to work together and play together. They are team-oriented. They love to solve problems peer-to-peer, and certainly their communication styles and technology preferences mirror that. In fact, Facebook is a very good example of how millennials would like to use technology. Keeping each other up to date. They've got this external consciousness. Hey, here's where I am. Here's what I'm doing. Here's where I'm going next, so that they can all sort of work together in a team. And of course, their parents started this whole ball rolling, starting with Barney, then play dates that were highly structured and scheduled, and all of the sort of team orientation that occurred beyond that. So the 7 core traits of millennials, as described eloquently by Howe and Strauss in their book, Meet the Millennials. And if you haven't read Millennials Go to College, I think that's a must-read for anybody that's in higher education. And if you search in your swag bag, you should have one of these little packets. The 7 core traits of millennials are documented nicely in your swag bag with these little cards that you're seeing on the screen. But the 7 core traits of millennials: special, sheltered, very confident. They really feel that they can do anything. And by the way, they've been told they can do anything ever since they were born. Team-oriented, work together in groups. Conventional. These kids very much want to fit into society. They want to play the rules. They aren't quite the outcasts or the rebels that the media sometimes would like to make them out to be. In fact, in all of the research that we do, they're focused on higher education. They're focused on doing well in school. They're focused on getting good jobs. They're focused on starting a family. This is not a group of kids that are really looking to fly in the face of authority. Pressured. Ever since their parents first whispered into their ears the great futures that they had in front of them, they felt this pressure to achieve and to perform. In fact, they have been achieving and performing. SAT scores, when you look generationally, are up in the double digits between Gen X and millennials, and also in a little bit more than double digits between boomers and millennials. So these kids are pressured to achieve, and they're definitely delivering on that. And that actually has an impact on how they view society as well. If any of those of you in the room that produce products intended for higher education markets, these kids expect you to do something for them. These kids expect your product to deliver. And a lot of times when you talk to them a little bit about what they like about and what they don't like about products, really, authenticity is really important. If it says on the box it's going to deliver this benefit to me, it darn well better do it, or I'm really not happy with this product. Equally, they're also looking for some kind of edge. They know that it's a competitive world. Their parents have told them that they're above average since birth, and so they're looking at this mass of 100 million of their fellow millennials, wondering how they're going to achieve all that they've been told that they could achieve. So in summary, the millennials were born between 1982 and 2004. They're defined by seeking to correct for the excesses of previous generations. The boomers, the Xers, reinforcing community and teamwork, bonding with parents and grandparents. Any of you that are in the education space know that these kids talk to their parents frequently. These kids are very much involved in their families. They're also looking to make positive change. And whether it's Teach for America or any of the other pro-social movements that we help define their messaging for this generation, kids want to do something good. They want to make a difference. They've been protected, pampered, and prodded to success by a generation of hyper-involved parents. And those of you that work on campuses know these helicopter parents and how they're hovering over their precious spawn moment to moment, day to day. First generation to exceed 100 million, and they're the multi-generation. Multicultural, over 40% of millennials are something other than Caucasian. They're also multiracial, multimedia, and multitasking. If you go into a dorm room, you'll see a laptop open, an IM session. You'll probably see a Hulu video playing. You'll see a textbook open, SMSs coming in across the cell phone. You say, hey, what are you doing? They say, nothing. If you study their media consumption, you quickly go, hold on a tick. There's only 128 hours in a week, right?